Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Drop Zone. Tanner Miller, the disc golf guy. Yeah, here on my channel for the Drop Zone action. Hope you guys are doing well. It's Saturday night, and I am trying to see if I can make everything get up and running again to possibly give you guys another edition here of the Drop Zone. So I'm going to be hoping that I can immediately or quickly get somebody that can confirm that everything is up and running. Um, Sam says he was thinking about going to sleep. Sam, you could do that or not, but I just wanted to say hi to everybody. I want to talk a lot about the 2024 schedule and some of the reactions that we've been seeing. I actually put together a graphic or two. I know this sounds crazy, but I'm trying to up my game here a little bit, even though it's been quite a while since you guys saw a Drop Zone. So it seems like you guys are saying everything is all good. Joe PG says all is good. Mark says sounds good. Got sound and video. I say it all the time. There's like technology, and then there's the rest of what you have here. I can only make I can only adjust for so much of it. So hopefully we are good to go. I'll try and keep my eyes on everything so that we can keep things rolling. I think I can even maybe post. I had it preset on the Instagrams. Let me go ahead and hit send on that so more people can know what's going on. Again, the main thing I want to do is I hate to call it a reaction video, but I do want to talk about some of the initial responses and reactions to the 2024 Disc Golf Pro Tour schedule. I really wanted to do this yesterday. However, in my town where my daughters go to school, it's homecoming. It's HOCO weekend. So things have been a little bit crazy for the last day or two. In fact, my oldest daughter is currently at homecoming as we speak. So everything good to go for now. All right. It's almost old news. It's been all of 24 hours and then some since yesterday. The Disc Golf Pro Tour announced that they were in fact going to have the 2024 season roll around, and I'm going to do my best to kind of paraphrase what we're seeing here. And this is the official website, of course, where it talks about it and gives the full-blown announcement. I don't want to say yada, 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 but there's obviously a ton of information on here, and a large portion of it just discusses what we're going to see for next year, including the changes, and then also a little bit about the points. That's probably the thing that's least of your concern at the moment is the point structure. You know, as long as everybody knows what points are ahead of time, that doesn't seem like that should be any kind of real issue or challenge there. But let's talk about the 2024 changes. There's some that just jump right off the page or that are most obvious to you guys. Clearly, starting in Florida, by far the biggest of all of the changes. Starting in Florida as opposed to out at the Las Vegas Challenge, or maybe even the week before, starting at the All-Star Weekend in Tucson. So starting at the Las Vegas Challenge is not a thing. Having the All-Star Weekend in Tucson, where it's been the last few years, also not happening. So it's going to be starting out the weekend before, actually. The start of this season is going to be the All-Star Weekend in Orlando, and then the following weekend in Brooksville. Orlando to Brooksville, hour and a half to 2 hours, roughly. I've done that a number of times. I often can fly into Orlando to get to Brooksville. Brooksville, of course, famously known for Throw on the Mountains course, and that's what we've been seeing there for 10 or 11 years now. So when you hear Brooksville, that's exactly what you're talking about. Now, naturally, that's the property that's owned by Dylan Cease along with Paul Macbeth. So that's what we're going to see for them kicking off. Paul was always very upfront about the idea of immediately wanting to have a pro tour event there. I'm quite honestly shocked to see that it's already on the schedule for 2024. Just knowing the type of work that has to go into it to get it pro tour ready and to get all of the infrastructure built out there that's going to be required to kick off our season correctly. But if there's anyone that's got the time, the resources, the connections, it's the combo of Paul and Dylan. Now, yes, many have talked about that the pending lawsuit is, I think, just that, still pending, as far as I've been informed, that there hasn't been any significant change in one way or another. I haven't heard any kind of significant updates whatsoever to the lawsuit that would take place out there, or has taken place, I should say, in Florida. Now, again, Grand Canyon has been a course that we've seen for the Throwdown the Mountain, also a Monster on the Mountain, if you check my coverage. That's been out there. It has not had a live signal. However, the Pro Tour now has more tools and resources than ever before. I know I tested live signal personally a number of years ago. It wasn't great. However, that was also 4, 5, 8 years ago, whatever it was. It was a long time ago. And lots of things have changed. And again, the Pro Tour has more resources available in terms of basically having somewhat of their own network, so to speak, that they could potentially set up. All right. So I'm just going to read through some of these real quick in case you've been kind of under a rock whatsoever in any capacity. What we're seeing, All-Star Weekend. Then we're seeing the Florida Open. Then 2 weeks later, Waco Annual Charity Open. Big change for Waco is that instead of 3 days, it's now going to be 4 days. And they're using a new course. So they've got 2 courses out there. That was talked about or kind of teased out last year. Now we have 2 courses, and it's going to be a 4-day event. So that's a significant change. I'll talk more about Waco and some of the golf that pertains to it in a little bit here. That's on another note later. Then we go to the Open at Austin, which we've seen in a couple different capacities. Yes, the women's championship is taking place. I know it just took place here a couple weeks ago, but it is taking place again. That's when the bid was set. When they placed the bid, this was not probably part of that conversation in terms of, in terms of them trying to be in Texas for 3 or 4 straight weekends. They knew golf would probably be happening, and it has to be kind of within the tour's logical route, but it wasn't necessarily known that they were going to probably be there for 3 or 4 weekends consecutively when that was placed. But nonetheless, that's when U.S. Women's is in Texas. Then Texas States, which is in Houston. Then we're going to have Jonesboro a couple of weeks later. I'm guessing the week in between those 2 weeks is probably Easter weekend, if I just had to guess without looking it up on a calendar. Then we're going to head a couple weeks later to Dynamic Disc Open in Emporia. Then there's going to be a little bit of a drive to get from Emporia out to Stockton. The one event we're going to see in California this year is going to be out at the OTB Open. That's taking place in May 17th through the 19th. I'm guessing the weekend between those two is Mother's Day, if, again, I'm thinking right. Then a plus event is the Portland Open, a 4-day event, just like we saw last year. Beaver State has been upgraded, so to speak, from a silver event to a standard elite event. And then 2 weeks later, they come back to the other side of the country. They come back into my neck of the woods, so to speak, the Preserve, Des Moines, then a week off, in theory, a week in between. And then you have the European Open as a major, a week off after that, and then we come back to a 4-round event at the Ledgestone again, still in the Midwest. In fact, most people will probably fly out of like Chicago, maybe Minnesota, depending, but probably Chicago or Minnesota after they're done with Des Moines, and then head to Ledgestone, Idlewild, then Worlds out in Virginia. Come back for a plus event. Now, this is a very unique date that we're pushing back. I had overheard some possibilities of conflicts with the parks and just overall scheduling challenges to put the Great Lakes Open. We're closer to the July 4th weekend. That wasn't practical in 2024, so we're seeing it pushed all the way back to Labor Day weekend, which is considerably later than we're used to seeing that particular event. And then we have the playoff events return, where we're going to see the Green Mountain Championship, and then the week after MVP, both of those being 4-round events that everybody knows and loves. USDGC, then the Pro Tour Championship, and then the Masters Cup. Holy cow. That's none of that's been that crazy in terms of when you look at it on the map, just in sheer logistics. However, I've seen and heard plenty of the reactions from the public that people are really frustrated about a lack of events in particular regions of the country. Snubbed is a word, shafted, forgotten about. We've heard all. I've seen just about every iteration of it. And what I'll quickly say to that is the same thing I've been saying for almost 20 years. And I'm sorry if it gets old to you, but it always there's a number of factors, and even if all those criteria are met, you're not guaranteed anything. There's no guarantees in life, I think they say. For example, in order to have an elite series or a major of any kind, Pro Worlds, Am Worlds, Junior Worlds, US Women's, whatever the case might be, or any other elite event, you first of all have to have an organizing committee, a LOC as we call them, local organizing committee, that wants to put it on. That's where it has to start, right? Because you, as a big fan, or as a local pro, or as a local amateur that is trying to get to pro, whatever you want, wherever you are in the world of disc golf, you first need a committee. You need an organization that wants to put the event on. And that doesn't just mean you. Like, you alone isn't enough. So you need an organizing committee that wants to. Second step would be you need an organizing committee that can. Right? You might have 5 really passionate people that have no idea how to put on an event of that scale or size. Okay, so you still got to check that box. Then after that, you have to have a lot of other things, one of which is probably a ton of money and or at least a look to sponsors to secure money. You have to be probably pretty flexible with your schedule or scheduling date. You may have to go a weekend after what's ideal for you, or a weekend before. Or honestly, you may have to pivot by a month. I think a lot of Deglow, Ledgestone, the Preserve, and Des Moines, all of those somewhat interchangeable because you're kind of in the same Midwestern area. Of course, you'd like them to make a logical loop or something of that nature, but that's not necessarily always possible. And so all 4 of those events probably have to have some play to them in terms of being a loop. And I'm just using them as an example. Same with Green Mountain Championship and MVP. We've had Worlds, therefore we had Green Mountain, either not on the map or push back a week or whatever. Then we had, MVP move up a weekend or two, MVP moving back a week or two, whatever the case might be. You have to have some flexibility. And here's what sucks. You may see the tour thinking about rolling into your area, and you're like, wow, this is a perfect weekend. We're going to shoot our shot. Here's the weekend. And the Pro Tour says, you know what? We'd love to come to town. Let's just say they do. Or a Worlds or whomever says, we'd love to come to town. We really need it to be this weekend, though. That's like the only logistical way that works. And you say, great, we love it. And you know what happens? You go to your parks department and you find out there's a car show. You find out there's 6 weddings booked. You find out there's a marathon in your city, which happened around my Worlds. Like, there's so many things that come into play. And that's where, just because you have a course and sponsors and money and volunteers and a group, if you have all those things, then you still have to have just the right weekend or weekends in which you can logically fit on the tour. And that's all getting so competitive. I cannot say that enough. That has become so incredibly competitive these days. And I think right off the top, you think of so many unbelievable events, whether they've been silver events or elite events or striving to be one or the other. They may check most, if not all, of those boxes, and then you're still not necessarily guaranteed. And I think that's largely because this year, more than ever, they're really focused, the Disc Golf Pro Tour, is really focusing on travel schedules and travel requirements. it feels like there's a much stronger emphasis on that this year than ever before. And I know you may disagree with that, and I know that is really frustrating for you. I'm just trying to provide what I think is a little insight as to the things that are being considered. And last year we saw some players say, "Hey, you know what? I'm going to skip starting in Vegas and I'm just going to start up in Texas." And they didn't want to make the trip out there to kind of go out to that direction twice. I, I can't judge what somebody wants to do. If, Vegas originally for many years was a 3-round event. This last year they went down to a 3-course event. This year they trimmed down to 2 courses. I think they've done an amazing job with listening to players and requirements and FPOTs and pins and continuing to improve. There's no questioning any of that. And we know that venue, I personally enjoy being there. That venue and that atmosphere to a lot of people is unbelievable. It's a perfect place to start. Who doesn't want to go to Vegas? Well, some people still don't. And it's not from a lack of the group or the people there doing the work. I think it's just come down to a scheduling consideration more than ever this year as to how they are going to do it. And I'm going to talk, I see a few people chiming in. I'm going to talk about a bunch of responses. We saw a response come in from an event in Florida. We've seen just a few hours ago a response come in from the Las Vegas Challenge event group and their a post to their own Facebook. I'm going to dive into that in a moment. So there are a lot of those things, but I don't know if it's a screenshot or if it's a card or a QR code I just need to send everyone, or a link. Like every single schedule forever that has come out in the last 20 years, that's dumb. I'm going to use my internet voice. That's dumb. They're not my area. F so-and-so. There's no way to appease everyone. I know that better than anybody who's been doing disc golf for almost 30 years. First of all, you can't please everyone. And second of all, I understand your frustration that they're not coming to your town, but just know there are so many factors. And I just scratched the surface. Those are just a handful. Everything I've said about majors over the last 10 or 15 years applies also now to Elite Series, if not even greater, because some of these Elite Series are requiring $20, $30, $50, $80,000, whatever it is, adding all this extra cash, and then having all of these criteria. And you have to have a course that appropriately can fit and suit our top level FPOs, our top level NPOs. Does it have enough space for spectators? Could it be managed in terms of doing tickets? Is there extra room for a vendor village? Is it going to flood during a rainfall? Could it snow? Could it, we could see weather, of course, on any given course around the country. It snowed in Las Vegas one year, and the next year it's 82 degrees. Like, of course, there's some weird anomalies, right? But it has to check all of those boxes, and then you still may not be considered, or you still may not be chosen. I'm not on that committee, thank God. I don't think it's an easy set of decisions to make. Cell signal has been an issue, has been a question. Again, those are easier hurdles to get over throughout the years. There's just so many factors, and I'm not making excuses. I'm just giving you guys behind the scenes. This usually applies often to majors. Oh my God, why is there no major? Why aren't we playing Worlds in California? Somebody from California needs to submit an effing bid. Like, it starts there. And your bid might be great. It still might get outbid by some other place. But it starts with a bid. And I get so mad when people just scream about how an event is not in an area or didn't get chosen, or there's not one there for them to play or spectate, and there was never even somebody submitting a bid to host it. Get active, get involved, start a club, join a club, support a club, be part of a local organizing committee, and then that will help potentially submit a bid and bring something to your area. All right? I can't scream that enough. And you would think I'd get sick of saying it, but it's 100% true. If there's no bid and no local organizing committee, you're not going to have an event. The PDGA or the Pro Tour isn't just going to be like, hey, oh, cool, you have a cool course? Oh, yeah, you check like, I don't know, 8 out of 10 boxes? Oh, but nobody's there to run it? Yeah, that no worries. Look, we're just going to give you one anyway. Like, that doesn't happen. Okay? And I know there's tons of great courses. A great course right now is one of 5 major considerations, in my opinion. One of 5, like 20%, in my opinion. Again, I'm not on the committee, but I would say 20% maybe is the actual course or courses. Somebody very understandably said, why aren't we back in Utah? Look at what it did for Worlds. It did. And in Utah was phenomenal. Do the people in Utah want to run it? They largely got dumped on. Like, it probably put a really bitter taste in their mouth. And yes, the Fort's an incredible course. Everyone, I think, agrees on that. Will lightning strike twice? And could we ever expect to see another? I mean, it almost feels like it would taint it to go back, and then there's a blowout on that event, and somebody wins by 10, and no holy shot occurs. I mean, yes, there's so many incredible things about it, but just because it happened once doesn't mean that it's going to happen again. Okay? Let me follow all that up by quickly saying, and I'm going to get back to more graphics so you don't just have to look at my face, but by quickly reading a few of the other details here that they had put out. They talked about the playoffs, the playoff events, the series, kind of some renaming. It's understandably a little bit confusing, but for the most part, you have elite level events worth 100% of the points. DGPT Plus events, previously called Elite Plus events, are 125% of the points. DGPT playoffs are 150%, just like they were. And a major is now worth 200%, which I get it. Lots of people want majors to be worth more. I could flip a coin. I don't know that I love that it's worth that much more, especially because the Pro Tour technically doesn't run the majors. They do media for it, and they're actively involved, but they don't technically run the majors. So it's weird that the Pro Tour standings, I don't know. Again, you could argue 6 ways to Sunday. Is that the phrase? About that. And then the other big thing, no silver events. No silver series or silver events. So I can't screw up that name anymore. But no more silver events. What it did say here is that will simply be referred to. Some U.S. silver events from previous seasons will be included in a DGPT qualifying series schedule that will allow players an additional opportunity to earn their tour card for the following season. Additional information about qualifying and previous silver events will be made later in the offseason. So take that for what you will. All right. Holy cow. Sorry, that's a lot. Really, my screaming about the my main screaming about the bidding process, and it does largely has always applied to majors, and now you can just extrapolate that it's very similar for Pro Tour. Okay, and you guys could all argue too. Then that's a great point somebody brings up in the board. Silver Series, we found a lot of top level players weren't going to a bunch of them. Were they worth it? What were the rules to them? Did it add confusion? Was it economical across the board to have the 1 or the 3 days of coverage for them, and then post-production and all of those types of things? People would get frustrated. Look what happened last year due to the scheduling. You saw right after Worlds, PEI didn't have exactly a full slate, and a lot of our top pros weren't there, because it was right after Worlds. Right before Worlds, we had a great event at the Rochester Flying Disc Open. Same thing. People were prepping for Worlds. Look back at KC Wide Open, ran a phenomenal event by everyone's standards, but not nearly as attended because people were going to Europe. So that's why you see that they've opened up the weekends before and after the European Open and after World Championships. There's going to be other events, and players can still go play those in some capacity, of course, but they're not putting on a high-level event that's taking place, and hopefully that will reduce some frustration for everyone across the board. Okay? Ray Zerhausen. Zerhusen? Ray, I love you, buddy. Thank you. He said, I promise to super chat when you do more drop zones. You rock. Thank you, Ray. I'll give a shout out to anyone that wants to jump in on super chats. It is up and running. I activated it for tonight. So if you want to do it, you're welcome to do so. All right. Here's what I want to get to among all this other stuff. Let's see if I can click on this and show you guys what I was talking about. Tons of different responses. And we're going to start with just one of the pages that I created. And here we go. And I'm going to read some of this in case it's tough for some of you to read just because of the size. Gulf Coast Charity Open said that basically they said they're aware, we are aware of the Pro Tour announcement and their schedule yesterday, the fact that the All-Star Weekend dates in Orlando are overlapping the current dates planned for the 2024 Gulf Coast Charity Open. Neither our staff or myself, who is the PDGA State Coordinator of Florida, were aware of the plans to rearrange the Pro Tour and move opening weekends from the West Coast to Florida, and the post was made yesterday. So it feels as if maybe it caught them off guard, I think is the word I would use. We were disappointed at the lack of communication. I guess they say it outright there. During the planning process, we acknowledge the value of the Pro Tour adds to our sport, and we are happy to see Florida getting its rightful place on the tour. We are moving forward with discussions with DGPT and PDGA as to what we'll do. Will they allow it to run on the same weekend? Does the draw spectating of the All-Star Weekend decrease our event attendance? So on and so forth. I'll say this immediately. Well, I guess I can't say anything for certain. I would say an all-star invite-only event should not prohibit an existing A-tier event, presumably an A-tier, from happening, in my opinion, because it is an all-star invite-only event. It'd be different if it were an open event, so to speak, but it's invite-only for the all-stars. Now, they'll have to make that decision as to whether or not it'll still be worth it to them, and that's fine. And I understand that dilemma, but for an all-star event that's invite only, if you have 300 other people that still want to play in the event that weekend and they'll still committed to coming as opposed to worrying about the all-star festivities, then I would be all about them still hosting it. I think that would be great. All right. So that was just one response. I'll get to a Las Vegas response, which actually came in after I was already making this one. Isaac Robinson, world champ, just posted, this schedule looks amazing. Okay, that's it. Isaac apparently likes it, and I'm just going to leave it at that. I'm making no judgment on it. That's just what he posted. This schedule looks amazing. He posted that to Facebook. I'll skip down to the bottom here in your bottom right-hand corner where Paul Macbeth had put out the schedule or shared it and then said, the secret is out. We're starting in Florida. I can't wait to bounce back in 2024. No secret that Paul obviously lives in Florida. Paul obviously buying that land along with Dylan Cease has been excited about it. He's excited to start in Florida. I'll reiterate what I opened with, which is I'm surprised that the Throwdown property in Brooksville is already expecting to open the season with an event. I think that's crazy and incredible and very ambitious. And I'm not second guessing it. I'm just saying that's a very ambitious move because I know they're going to want to have all their I's dotted and their T's crossed, and that's going to be a lot of work out there. All right. I thought it was kind of funny. This follows it up. Jason Barella, who is Anthony Barella's father, said, I guess we're now moving to Florida in a couple years, which I thought that was pretty funny. They're in Arizona. And for nothing more, I found that one response kind of funny that they said they're now moving to Florida in a couple years. Brody Smith had put out a message yesterday saying, of course, the year I moved to Vegas, the Pro Tour pulls it from the tour. Nothing for nothing. Just thought that was kind of a funny response as well. So those are a couple of what we've seen some of our pros say. Okay. Now, I want to continue on and read what more people have said. Again, I wanted to get a little bit of reaction in every different direction that I could. By no means was any of this uniform, and I think that's one of the most telling things about all of this. If you read, I didn't even go to Reddit. Jeez, somebody can blow me up there. But Facebook, Twitter, Instagram were my main sources of just poking around, and it wasn't unanimous by any means at all. Certainly not by the fans, but not even among our players does this feel like it's completely unanimous. And I'm going to get to that and what I mean by that in a moment. So if we click on, excuse me, do I know what I'm doing? Almost. Look at this. Another graphic, folks. Yeah, when we click there, I can tell you that let's just start with Ricky. He posted this earlier. He said, I'd like to see the schedule in the future allow for a longer off season. We have events starting in mid-February and not ending till the beginning of November, next year in particular. I feel like us top players need longer mental and physical break than 2 months. What's everyone think? Which is always the easiest way to put it out there. What's everyone think? He says what he thinks and then does ask for others. And to be fair, as I continue to read some of those details and responses, some people are like, yeah, I get it. I like seeing less events that are going to be better attended, having just the 18 events and maybe skipping the silvers and not having those, which didn't get the full turnout of top pros because they weren't attending. So there was a lot of people saying that. And then, truth be told, because it's the internet, a lot of people just flat out bashing him. Hey, quit being a baby. Suck it up. I don't really care. There's so many other professional sports that play 8 or 9 or 10 months, and suck it up. And, people play 162 baseball games plus playoffs, da-da-da-da. Everybody had their examples and more or less said, you throw Frisbee, suck it up. Now, I think that's a little short-sighted, only in the sense that, keep in mind, most of those people that travel probably travel pretty comfortably. None of them, not none, that's an overstatement, most of them are not possibly sleeping in a van that may or may not have air conditioning. They're not driving 6, 8, 10, 12 hours to, leave on a Monday morning to drive 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 hours, maybe even 18 or 20, depending on the trip, to then practice for a round or two and then start playing again. And I'm not defending just Ricky or our top players, but I am saying, to some degree, these guys still aren't exactly living and traveling like, the Milwaukee Brewers in my hometown, or like the Chicago Bulls did on various jets and whatnot. I'm just going to really date myself with the 90s Bulls reference. But yes, it's a take by Ricky. We're also asking these players to throw farther than we ever have. And then we have this ongoing debate about 3 versus 4 round events, sometimes 5, well, rarely, 3 or 4 round events, plus a practice session, plus you guys want a warm up, plus you want a skins match, plus you want a charity exhibition. There's more obligations than ever before. That's all I'm saying. Whether or not you can complain about them, well, that's for the player to do. But there's more expectations than ever before on our players. All right, I'm going to keep reading. Jerry Patterson, let's go to him. Essentially, I think your TD/co-TD, I think he was TD on listed as the official TD, along with others, for the KC Wide Open. And he posted yesterday. I don't know if it was 2BH, to be honest, or if it was a Throwback Thursday, but I don't know. Either way, it doesn't matter. He says, it feels really bad to be snubbed. There was a ton of people that put countless hours of effort in one of the best events of the year. ... And I love each and every one of you. KC Disc Golf Love. Jerry and his crew, again, by all accounts, I'm sad I wasn't personally there. Jerry and his crew did just that. Put on, from what everyone said, a phenomenal event. Just awesome event at a great course with more added cash, I think, than they've ever had before. In Kansas City, a thriving, staple mecca of disc golf that's had serious high-level disc golf now for 40 years. They check damn near every box. I don't know what boxes they don't check. And as I said earlier, maybe they still checked every box and a schedule didn't work out, or something else just wasn't quite there in order to make it happen. And I will echo what I've said to everyone else, Jerry and crew. The disc golf community loves you, and as tough as this sounds, don't take it personal. And as far as I know, I should clarify again. I don't make these decisions, but don't take it personal. Sometimes you can do 99 out of 100 right things, or 100 out of 100 right things, and it still just doesn't go your way. So that's what I'll say. As a guy who attended the KC Wide Open in 1999, when I was still playing amateur, for crying out loud. So incredible city. Couple other people, I'll read these TDs that had said something. The Cascade, I think I saw Jeff Corns make a post somewhere, essentially just expressing a little frustration of not being able to have the Cascade Challenge event take place as a silver event. Again, great community, lots of good things, but unfortunately not having an event. Silver, I did not see a post, but I just know that Tallahassee has worked really hard. I've covered events there, I don't know, 4 out of the last 5 years. They've worked very, very hard and done a lot of amazing things and have a great course at Tom Brown and have a lot of dedicated people and have had a ton of money, and they're in Florida. I get it. For whatever reason, we didn't see that event on the map. I just talked about the KC Wide Open. And then the other quick thing, and I couldn't find it, even though I read it at one point and then lost it. Chris Clemens at one point, this goes back to what I was saying earlier with regards to some of the courses and some of the scheduling and whatnot. Chris Clemens just essentially made a post and said, yes, Waco's going to 4 days. We're going to have 2 separate courses. He said, however, I'm going to paraphrase because, again, I couldn't find it. I didn't screen grab it quick enough. And it's probably out there and I just can't find it. But he essentially just said, I'm questioning how the style of these courses. He goes, yes, Waco has 2 wooded rounds in March. He goes, we don't play wooded golf again, essentially, until Northwood Black at Ledgestone. And I thought that was, again, and I did cherry pick mostly from our pros. There was a million other posts by non-pros, and that's fine. I'm not saying but I was trying to specifically just looking at what some of our top players who it directly impacts more than anyone. And I thought that was an interesting take from Chris. And I'm not saying he's wrong, clearly. I mean, if you look at what we saw for the schedule, which now, of course, I'm trying to remember where I put it. But when you look at the schedule, of course, he's not wrong. He's kind of second guessing the extent in which he's seeing wooded golf. And if you're a fan of that, whether that's to watch it or to play it, you might feel a little disheartened by that. Excuse me, here we go. I've got the schedule. I was just going to real quick look at, Jonesboro. Well, let's look at Waco and then open at Austin, and then Texas State's not necessarily wooded. I can't say that. I don't know what the Houston courses are going to look like, courses. Jonesboro's not what you'd call wooded. Music City's not what you'd call wooded. DDO's not wooded. OTB's not wooded. Portland's not wooded. Beaver State Fling, that is certainly has more woods, of course, some of the most beautiful ones, but still not what you'd consider like super wooded. Des Moines Challenge, not so much. European has a mix, and then Ledgestone. And then we get into Idlewild and so on and so forth. So I thought it was really interesting, and it makes perfect sense what he's saying. That's the kind of golf that a lot of people like watching, but not necessarily practical with the way the tour looks right now. All right, what I want to do is go back to one more other really, I'll call it super significant post or response that we saw, and this was just made a couple hours ago. It says 2 hours ago, so it was maybe 4 hours ago now. The Las Vegas Challenge, presented by Innova, had posted and said they were disheartened to learn that the LVC will no longer be an elite PDGA Disc Golf Pro Tour event in 2024. They will continue to run the event like a major, as we have always done over the last 24 years. It has grown to become one of the best ran and well-known disc golf events, accommodating numerous divisions across the board. I'm just going to kind of skip ahead. Yes, they're doing a great job, and the 25th anniversary is coming up, and their plan for it. Innova, our title sponsor, has committed to the same level of support. Together, we strive to bring media coverage for those that cannot enjoy the amazing disc golf Wild Horse has to offer. And Team LVC has an immense amount of pride. There's no monetary value that can be put on the time and work that they've put into it. Innova and Wild Horse have always supported Team LVC in our efforts to improve the tournament. Unfortunately, we have been able to get to that level of partnership with the Pro Tour. Transparency has always been a must for the LVC, and our business practices have been integral, that's a tough word for me to say, to running a smooth event and has grown each year. We are always open to establishing new partnerships and renewing old ones with sponsors, vendors, and partners with respect to integrities and values. We continue to uphold the high standards to the players and spectators that have come to expect Wild Horse. We look forward to a 25th anniversary. We might have a special disc release. And here's maybe one of the biggest then pieces is the final line. The 2024 dates are still in the works, so stay tuned for updates. I'm just going to say this. First of all, lots of disappointment from lots of different people. I think Ezra Aderhold also said he is frustrated or upset that we're not out there playing. I can understand, after they've done what they've done, and this has become obviously a logistical conversation about where we're starting the tour, and how many times players are going across country. The feedback that the players gave and have given may not align, or clearly must not align, with basically what you think. And I know that sounds really tough to read or hear or to understand, but if enough players have said, hey, we really dislike the travel, not necessarily the event or necessarily the courses, although that may or may not factor into any given stop, we dislike the specific travel. You're between a rock and a hard place. Who are you trying to satisfy the most, I think is another question that comes to mind when you have these conversations. My heart goes out to the LVC club, who has worked incredibly hard. Now, just a few days ago, again, I should have opened with this. I am not a Disc Golf Pro Tour employee. I am contracted to them on any given weekend. I hope that they continue to contract my services, whether it's sidelines or in the booth. I'm happy to do so. I do not make any decisions, nor do I have any influence over what they do. That's all long-winded, disclaimer. I don't make any of these decisions, and I really don't envy the people that have to, because these are tough decisions. These are people that you've forged partnerships with that have been really solid for many years. And the old line is, when you're in a breakup, it's not you, it's me. Like, I think that's true to some degree here. It's not you, LVC, who's putting on a phenomenal event or, a great kickoff here to our season. It's me, it's us, it's the Pro Tour. We are just shifting in a different direction. We're starting somewhere else. We're trying something new. And another line I've always heard is, no doesn't always mean never. No sometimes means just not now. Who knows? Just think, the LVC used to kick off the national tour, or it was always just before the national tour kicked off, I should say. And then it was at the Memorial, and then the Memorial is no longer part of the Pro Tour to kick it off, or the national tour. And now LVC had stepped into that role of kicking off the Pro Tour for a few years. I mean, anything can still happen. I don't want to rule out anything. Obviously 2024 seems to be set in stone, but I'm just saying, just know anything can happen on any given year as well. I guess that would be the one comment I would leave out there with regards to that. So, wild horse, no, wild just in general. It was, I think, a shock to a lot of people. I don't know what the communication was like. I know that today is Saturday, so on Thursday night, I messaged, and this is purely selfishly, out of pure my own reasons. I messaged someone at the Pro Tour and said, hey, I'm just curious. I'm thinking about travel for next year. I'm thinking about weddings, personal obligations, and things of that nature. I know that the majors are set, but do we have any idea what a pro tour schedule looks like? And the gentleman in charge of the media side for me said essentially, no, things are crazy. Here's a copy, but it could be dead wrong. And I said, okay, that good enough. Like that was good enough to at least give me some idea. And the next day, the entire schedule came out. And that is, I feel like it took a number of people by surprise. Clearly, some clubs or organizations. I didn't know when the date was going to be that it was going to happen, but yeah, it clearly took me by surprise, and and surprising for someone to say, "Hey, here's a rough draft, like the 10th version of a rough draft, and it might be dead wrong." And then like 6 hours later, a so to speak final version gets released to the internet. Now, I'm not blaming my source at all because clearly some loose ends got tied up. But it went from a rough draft to a final draft seemingly pretty quickly, and then I actually had a lot of my answers, knowing. And I don't even know what events I'm working. I think that's a follow-up to all of this, is I personally have no idea what events I will be contracted or involved with at all. No idea. I've got some ideas, and I've got hopes and thoughts and aspirations for certain ones, but I don't know what that number is. I have no idea what number or what events they are. Ray did ask a quick question here saying, do you think they released this news on a weekend? I mean, technically it was a Friday morning. I did think about that for a moment. I feel like a lot of time isn't the official time to bury news on a Friday afternoon. So I guess depending on the time zone, maybe it was afternoon for you. I don't think that they necessarily tried to bury it or time it due to that. I can't speak to that for sure. Again, I don't make those calls. Maybe they were just waiting on a couple of very specific details to get finalized, and then that's what ultimately got us to where we did. Okay, Tom, my boy, in love you, buddy. I wanted to chime in on your logo design, but I think you arrived at all the right decisions. Said, let's make this easy. The Pro Tour starts at Valley View in New Berlin, January 13th. Yes, dead of winter on one of the shortest courses in the state, where I may or may not have shot 18 under before. I don't know. Yes, clearly a top-notch course that we should have, as some of you guys, I'm sure, have talked about it. And I get it, and I think one of the and I didn't pull it up. I probably could if I really looked for it for you guys. Let's do it just for funsies. Let's see if I can pull up. Maybe this won't work. You guys saw a number of people post population density, and that's not the end-all be-all. Of course, it's not, to disc golf and where tournaments should be played. However, you look at Montana, which may have some beautiful courses, you're not getting a big draw of spectators there. It's just, like there's a number of people that posted population density. And again, that is not the end all be all either. It is certainly not. However, just think of that when you do say, oh man, I live in the middle of Montana and we got some amazing courses. And you do. That doesn't mean a pro tour stop is inevitable to be there. I guess that's how I'd put that. The tour starts with the cold turkey, which I'll be posting in a few weeks. I don't want to get too sidetracked, but yes, a little less than 2 months, I'll be hosting a cold turkey 18. Holy cow. Yeah, one of the longer running tournaments I've ever run. That'll be taking place C-tier in Wisconsin on a course. And that's such a great example. And I'll segue to that for just a moment. There's 2 courses in southeastern Wisconsin where I host 2 annual events, the Skyline Classic and the Cold Turkey, usually one in springtime, one in the fall. One right after Thanksgiving, Cold Turkey. They're good courses. And I don't just say that because I had a hand in designing them, because it was amazing property and I'm not that smart. So it did it for itself along with a few other smart people. They're good courses. People often say to me, hey, why don't we have a pro tour event here? they're not that good. Like, they're good courses, but they're not pro tour courses. Could we host some other less than pro tour caliber players? Could we have a Masters? No slight on Masters, which I am one. Could we have a Masters event there, a Tim Selinsky? Could we have a Worlds of some sort there, a non-pro Worlds? Could we have, U.S. Women's there? Yes, yes, and yes. But that's just one of those initial like gut checks that you have to have, because a lot of people always will say, but we've got great courses. We should have an event here, wherever that is. And just know that it has to be really good. I mean, it really has to challenge the players in order to be considered. And then it needs 100 other things to factor in. But I just want to throw that out there because I do get that a lot. People will say, hey, can we host such and such in this area? And I always am like, well, not always, but if it's an area I'm familiar with, I'll be like, here's the caliber of play you could have here for a major or some big event, but you couldn't have these people here, whatever that is. That's something else that is to be considered, most certainly. All right. All right, guys. I want to check the board and see if there's anything that's absolutely crucial, but these are some of the things that I really wanted to talk about. I don't know. Do you guys have any of the right answers, the official answers, better answers? I feel like I've addressed most of the conversations that have been had, and a lot of the responses that we saw from top pros and then from some top events. There were some disappointed people, and I understand. I think that it is fair after clubs and organizations and cities and parks departments and personal people and personal property have poured their heart and soul into certain things to not have it come to fruition, to be granted or awarded a stop. I understand. And it's not like the Pro Tour is excitedly being like, no, and no. And, I mean, if you really look at this as a glass half full situation, we're in a damn good spot that the Pro Tour can be picky to be selecting what they are feeling is the best of the best for the next year. And keep in mind that can still change. Oh, the other quick thing, and I am not going to go too far down this rabbit hole. I just want to say, because a lot of people did say, hey, it feels like, they totally rearranged the tour and the event, specifically as a reaction to transgender competitors and or specifically Natalie Ryan. I don't see that to be the case. I think the math proves otherwise, or the schedule proves otherwise. I think that was a gut reaction for a lot of people to say, hey, they went and more highly focused or exclusively went to states where they felt like there would be less possible litigation. I don't really see that being the case. We're still having the preserve where there was a conversation. MVP still happening. Stockton, OTB still happening. Multiple events in Oregon still happening. So that I just wanted to throw that out there. That's an entirely separate conversation, and I'm not making any additional comments on it in that sense. I'm just replying to the fact that that was posted initially, and it doesn't appear to align with that gut reaction of like, oh, they're just going to places where there'll be less challenge, because that doesn't seem to be the case. So that discussion will continue. I think we're going to see the United Series come back next year, just like we're going to see some of these qualifying events. We're going to see tour card events. I think one of the biggest questions that now comes up is, does this open the door? This is what I'd really love to know from you guys, if this is possible or practical, keeping in mind everything I've already yammered about. Does this open the door for someone or some entity to seemingly collectively hold a second tour? And is that at all worth it? I saw a post, for instance, right after LVC was announced that they weren't starting at LVC. Callie McMorran, I feel like instantly jumped on and said, LVC may not be kicking off the Pro Tour, but the Masters Tour would love to talk to you. So what Callie's been doing this year, that's a whole nother podcast and another separate conversation of good, positive things for her. Hopefully everything's gone well and she's learned a ton. I am actually really excited for a full update on that, and I'll talk to her. But the other conversation piece is people have said, hey, should there be another tour? I think the concept is there. The challenge is, what's your selling point? Is it just a collection of really good events that are happening anyway and you're just going to put a point series around it? Or are you going to have something else that cohesively glues them together? Because you could take every event that hasn't remained either on the Elite Series or remained a silver event, take every one of them. Let's say there's 10 or 12 in total. Maybe there's 15 or 20 total. I don't know, over the last 8 years. You say to every one of those events, hey, if you've ever been at that level, let's talk. And we're going to create our own tour. And here's the events, here's the weekends we're going to do it on. I think that's great. Call it whatever you want, whether you want to lean into it being a whatever you call it. I don't care. Can it be more than just a point series? That's the question. Because you're probably not getting live. You're certainly not getting live to the capacity that DGN does it. A lot of the post-production teams are caught up working with DGN. Not that more can't be created, but where's the incentive? What are you doing to make it more than just 10 or 15 events that happen to have a series or point series attached to it? And maybe there's a business model. I don't want to sound, I don't even know what the word would be. I don't want to sound disparaging or anything and call it like, the Pro 2 Tour, but like just whatever you want to call it. And they're obviously all great events, or have been, and want to continue to be great events. But take every event that has ever achieved a silver or above and that isn't currently on the tour and glue them together. What do you call it? And is there a model there? For the right person, there is. For the right amount of money, there is. Practical? I don't know. Are you going to have a lot of players that pop into only one or two of those events because they happen to have an off weekend? And Cole Radalin is okay with, playing in the Cascade Challenge. Because it's regional. He plays in the Cascade Challenge because it's on this other tour, but he plays in that. But he's the top dog there, and he's the only one that is a regular on the Pro Tour. I don't know. Because I worry you'd get a lot of the same disappointment that we got out of the silver events, which is, well, this is a great event with a great course and great people and some good added money. However, we still didn't get the top dogs here. I don't think you can bank on getting them there. Call it the Super Silver or whatever. Anyway, just a thought. I know that got tossed around. A lot of people said, there should be another tour. No, I'll say this, no one's stopping you. Strike while the iron's hot. Take it upon yourself. Do whatever. Get the money. Get the infrastructure, the resources. And I say that with complete sincerity. Go for it. I mean, there's an opportunity there. I'm not crazy enough to do it or have no idea who would, but it's an idea. And we didn't even talk about it tonight. That's for another day, maybe. Just what Europe will look like, what traveling overseas will look like, what some of these opportunities with a few extra weeks. I mean, it's clearly going to be disappointing for a lot of people to not see a PCS specifically on as an Elite Series this year. Some are going to be very disappointed by that. I don't know where the PCS crew stands just yet, but I'll be interested to see what international events. That's certainly a place that interests me. A place, an international, but just the international scene in general and what that's going to mean. I'm excited to see what that's going to look like. So, I'm just going to take a few minutes of any additional points or questions. I have no idea how many people are watching. I haven't paid a lot of attention. I just want to say thank you guys. If you're still here, we're almost exactly at an hour, which is about 20 minutes longer than I really would like to be. But I do want to say that just to really put this out there, if I can do a few minutes of work each night, I do like the idea of doing the best I can to have something of a similar nature for your USDGC/Throw Pink coming up next week. Sometimes I enjoy myself a little too much with some beverages, but anything's possible next week. Things might get a little silly. All right. The American Disc Golf Tour. Yes, let's bring that back if you're old school enough to know what that looks like. Tom says, could even be as drastic as a new entity to challenge the PDGA. I feel we are still young and that door may become open. I can't say this enough. Every time there's a frustration or complaint, some very warranted, some I think are ridiculous, but whatever. Everywhere in between, we talk about players' unions. Go and start one. Like whoever you are, if you want to bark about it, please start one. Dave Feldberg collected money 15 years ago. A players' union doesn't exist yet. People bark about it on the weekly. I'm not opposed to it. I'm just sick of hearing about it. So somebody start it and like follow through with it. Okay? So let me start there. Second of all, as you just struck a chord with me here, Tom, I'm all about somebody starting. If you want to start a challenger to the PDGA, I'm also all about it. Like, I believe in people going out and doing that. And I know I'm sounding probably a little argumentative or maybe even defensive. I'm really not. Like, I just want you to do it. I want somebody, and I'm not yelling at you, Tom. I just want somebody to do it because I've heard the barking about it for 10 or 20 or 30 years. And that's all it is there's a lot of people just complaining and nobody pushing it forward. I'd love to see it. Maybe it could be really successful and it could help grow things. It could take over. Like, we want the best possible products that are out there. I have been a pretty big fan of the PDGA. I've been a member since I was a teenager in high school and went to my first Worlds in 1996 as a teen. But it's not perfect. They'll admit it. I'll admit it. I was a state coordinator for 20 years. I've run hundreds of tournaments. I've played in hundreds of tournaments. And it's not perfect. I think anybody's lying to you if they claim that it is. But if you're so bent about it and you hate it so much and you talk about it all the time about needing another solution, be the change you want to see. That's all I can say. Like, same thing with the players' union. I'm just so sick of people complaining about it and then not doing anything about it. So I encourage anyone, and that's an open, and if you want to call me and talk about it, if you want any of my input, maybe you do, maybe you don't, I don't know. I'm more than happy. Like, I want the best possible products for the biggest swath of golfers out there. I still don't think you're going to please everybody no matter what you do, that's for sure, because I've seen some pretty stupid things get started and fall on their face, some of which I could call, some which surprised me. But by all means, start it. Be the change you want to see, right? Or however that stupid saying goes, but it's true. All right, sorry. Woo, Tom, get me fired up. Yes, and Brad says I've got 7,000 viewers. That'd be cute. I don't care if there's 10 viewers. If it's you 10, I'm just glad you guys are here. Dustin, are you really chiming in with the Florida Open? We'll be at the Throwdown the Mountain course. Where you been, Dust? You're an hour behind. That's Steve Dodge with DGPT. PDGA didn't cooperate and they lost. Yeah, I mean, Steve Dodge pitched multiple tours or solutions for multiple years. And then even in the early goings of the Pro Tour, it still had its struggles and fell short mightily in a lot of ways. And then got a reboot. And things infused cash largely, and other things infused in a different direction. I'm all about it. Go get it. Brad says, might make sense to have a competing tour that uses primarily wood courses. There's an angle. I love it. Absolutely love it. Like, you get Elmer's Wood Glue as your sponsor. It's the wood tour. There's some silly name in there. Love it. I'm sounding cocky, but I mean it sincerely. I'd love to see it. That would be awesome. Tom says, hear that, kids? Be the change. Is there a correlation between the events kept on the tour and their ability to increase purse size year over year? So I'm sure there is, Ray. That's a great question. I mean, you want an event that's going to continue to grow and thrive, and that maybe you're kind of betting on a little bit, right? And that's not to take anything away from another event. If an event came to you and said, hey, you required us to have, I'm just gonna make up a number, $30,000 added cash. We had 35,000 added cash. We can have at least 35, maybe even 40 next year. And then the tour looks at the next event that might check all the boxes, and they say, hey, we've had 60 added cash. Next year it's for sure 80, and the year after that, and every year after that, we want to be at 90 or 100 or whatever. Again, money isn't the end all be all. It has to check all the other boxes. But if you're looking at those two in a somewhat, you're kind of weighing them out, yeah, the scale's going to tip a little heavier for the one that has shown a maybe a more consistent growth of purse. But they have to check every other box first. Like, right? That might be a tiebreaker, in my opinion. Good rant, Terry. Thanks. What if it's 10 Toms? The Lumberjack Tour. There you go. I played in the Lumberjack Open. I think I won it. I'll look for a trophy. That was from the 90s. Don't worry about it. Does Terry like the tour stops? Every tour stop has its pros and cons. Like literally everyone, right? Like, but that could be true of everything. Like, even the beloved Maple Hill, it can only fit so many people. It's near the end of the year, doesn't have as much capacity, it doesn't have as much daylight, and it's on the East Coast, which is a little bit more expensive. Like, right? It's a great course. Most people seem to love the course. Cell signal's not great in a couple spots. It's legitimately challenged back on the green of 11, and then usually on the green of 13, and mainly the green of 12 and 13. I could get nitpicky about every single stop, and it could hit you with a reason that you probably maybe even never even thought of, because it's really particular to me or to the media or to some experience I've had over there in the last decade. So, I mean, you want to get, I'll throw it out there. Think about how many of events that I've been part of in usually a post-production capacity that eventually I've quote unquote lost to then live or to the tour. If you want to think of a quick list off the top of my head, Throw Down the Mountain's about to become one under crazy circumstances. I mean, that has been an event I've covered 7 or 8 or 9 out of the last 11 years. I'm hopefully going to still be involved, but it's no longer a post-production disc golf guy exclusive like it has been like 8 out of the last 10 years. Ledgestone, I was covering Ledgestone more than a decade ago, before there was ever a pro tour. We tried to do live there. That failed. Go figure, because Northwood Black or the Northwood course didn't allow us to. But I covered Ledgestone. That got engulfed by the tour. I was at MVP well before the tour ever existed. I was there in 2010 doing some of my first media work. So that's no longer a quote-unquote disc golf guy production or exclusive. Look at Smuggler's Notch. I went there and lost money the very first time I ever visited there. A couple years later, it's on the tour. Tallahassee, I'd been there prior to it being on the tour. So those are just a few that I think of right off the top of my head. I'd kind of been involved in some Minnesota events to some degree. I covered Am Worlds in 2014 live with Smashbox. That area then became on the tour. So, again, if you want to get really nitpicky or start thinking about some of those really unique scenarios that might be very specific to me, those are a few that could come to mind where someone could say, well, that kind of sucks. You used to go cover that for your channel, and now I'm essentially pushed aside. And again, that sounds maybe, I don't think it sounds whiny on my end. It's a reality of the growth, which is also cool, because then I can turn around and say, man, I was at some of these events helping discover them or blow them up for them to get to the next level. I think that's kind of cool in a lot of ways as well. And Central Coast has done the same at a number of events as well. I was covering the Nick Hyde, which was an early tour stop before it got onto the tour in like 2017 or so. That's another one that comes to mind. So do I like the stop? What's my favorite stop? That's so tough. I mean, Terry's fave is probably Preserve. Kale is his bestie. I love Kale. Who doesn't? The Preserve's not my favorite course. It's great to cover. It's not my favorite course on the tour, and it's not because it's a bad course. It's just not my favorite. I wouldn't personally ever enjoy playing the Preserve in its tough layout because I throw half as far as those guys. So, whereas I feel like although there's still a huge advantage to having a big arm at, say, Maple Hill course would be more exciting for me to personally play than the Preserve. Or an Idlewild, for instance, would be more fun. I would like to see Blue Ribbon Pines course have the pros at it for a break-off tourney. Well, that was a whole nother discussion we already had. And I have covered the Minnesota Majestic at Blue Ribbon Pines. I covered it before it was on the Pro Tour in 2016. Another good example. It'd be funny to see a huge company come in and challenge the Pro Tour and the DGPT goes bankrupt. Terry switches tune to how unfair it is, and he isn't happy with how the direction of disc golf is headed. No, not really. I've thought about that. That is a potentially a fair concern. Nike teams up with ABC and then creates all the best courses and has all the best coverage, and I never get a phone call, and I'm not involved in media, and I'm not involved in running the events, and I have nothing to do with them, and it completely changes over. I would pivot. I'd pivot to 10 other things in disc golf where I feel like I could still be an asset and resourceful and hopefully grow and thrive, even if it wasn't 100% directly within the media. There's so many other things that I would jump into in a heartbeat that I absolutely love doing. Or I help develop and expose and discover other places and tours internationally. Or maybe I work directly with a manufacturer. Maybe a manufacturer contracts me, and in some capacity, I'm helping do some other media work for another company, or maybe the PDGA has somewhere where I could be useful. I would. I've thought about that because, of course, a wise now Hall of Famer, disc golf Hall of Famer, just inducted this year, John Dusler, once said, "Everybody is replaceable." And he's not the first to say that, but he said it once. I don't think he meant it maliciously at me specifically at the time, but it's so true. Everybody is replaceable, myself included. On any given day, I'm 100% replaceable. And of course, I then think about where I could pivot and what that means after the fact, or in addition to the fact, or tangential to the fact. Everybody's replaceable. I agree. So JD or JW, I don't know if that's what you mean. Larry LeBon's Lumberjack. Yes, I played in that many, many years ago. I won it. I won the Lumberjack Open, and I also cashed in it in Pro 1 year, I think. USA flag shorts Larry, as in Larry Leonard. Is that who we're talking about? The legend from North Carolina. Seems the growth is slowing down and causing changes. Jomez being saved by the Pro Tour. What are disc sales still dipping as your guess? Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be opening a disc golf shop today. 2 years ago, it was a no-brainer. 4 years ago, maybe. I wouldn't today, depending on where you live, of course. But yeah, clearly the COVID boom and that's a whole, again, separate podcast. But yes, there's a lot of different ways to look at that. Terry, I saw you randomly at the Denver Airport Concourse C on Monday. Hey, Killian, yes, you were wearing the pink pound bag on the front. Yes, I saw you, said hi or waved at you, or we nodded, hello. And then an hour or so later, I see a gentleman wearing a sandstone-colored grip bag. And we also nodded, and he kept walking. So Good to see a pair of disc golfers in Denver's airport. That's a common layover for me when I go back and forth to Bend. Is there any talk or reaction to increase of artificial OB? I can't speak to that quickly. No. Where in the world is the 2011 footage tour? Yeah, that's a good question, especially when this guy, that's me, won the unofficial speed putting world championships, beating Yeti didn't show up. He wasn't there. He also qualified. I beat everybody else at Worlds. Running around 2 minutes, as many putts as you could make from 8 or 10 different stations. Spoiler alert, I won. It was definitely a career highlight, like in front of hundreds of people down on the Santa Cruz, down in one of the wharfs or whatever, in the sand. It was small in the big picture, but still a career highlight. I beat all the other best in the world putters that particular. I cashed at that Worlds. Those aren't related, but it was that same Worlds. Many of you who are with you throw those times, Terry, and I appreciate it. Thanks, Earl. I'm the Oest of the G's. I appreciate that, Brad. GMC is hard to top, understandable. I think backloading the East Coast and making them mostly playoff events every year just because of the way it travels is unfair for the rest. You use a couple of really subjective words there. Is unfair. Well, rest of the country, I guess I'll take as a phrase. To whom? What? Logistically, courses, timing, like unfair is. I'm not dismissing you, but for every argument you make, I could probably make a counter. But I hear what you're saying. Ray says, personal question: as your work in disc golf enabled you to earn the living you want? Wow, Ray. As he super chats $5. No. Short answer is no. However, as you guys can tell, I'm not currently starving. I need to be in one of those cultures. I think they're mostly over in Asia, I believe, where that's the kind of the measurement of success is some guy's stomach, as in he's being fed well and eating well. If I was over there, man, I'd be killing it. No, I am happy that I am no longer. I'm still cheap, and I'll forever be a cheap individual. I'm no longer deciding which flavor of ramen am I keeping for dessert for next week as opposed to the flavor I dislike this week or whatever. I don't know. By no means am I where I'd like to be. However, it is not as painful as it once was. And I've got a lot of people and a lot of hard work to thank for that. So I guess I'll say that. Fair answer. We can tell your passion. I appreciate that. Is there 337 women? If Terry is not replaced, I don't know. There's 337 women. I don't know what. Oh, women's had 337 players. That used to be a Bowling Green AMs type of numbers. Yes. And then that grew to 500 and 600 and 1,200. And then there was some shakeup. But yeah, I was at some early Bowling Greens. I told off a Hall of Famer who was being a little bitch, and he deserved it. And I don't regret it to this day. But in 2000, my first year playing pro, I'd been around for a number of years, but a particular Hall of Famer was just being absolutely miserable to play with. And I told him as much, even though I was a rookie. And it wasn't just like a clout thing, or it was just so frustrating to play with him. But that was at a Bowling Green. Wish I could break more into disc golf. Dust says very competitive in limited spots. You got to tell me. I've been doing what I've been doing to get here. Disc golf is easy. Just be really tall, super athletic, nothing else to do, and throw every day for 12 years. That helps. Pivot. Milwaukee bar that sells discs and creates micro brews. The Disc Golf Guys Velvet Lounge. Tom, man, I'm your first investor. You come back to Milwaukee. I am your co-owner / investor. Let's do it. Cheap, you're not. Frugal is smart. Yes, I'd like to think I'm frugal. That's what I'm trying to become more of. USWDGC was great this year. Always love hearing from you, Terry. Real gem. I missed it. Sorry, but what's up with silver? They're just not offering silver events. Is the long and short of it, for a myriad of reasons. Probably attendance, other challenges. People just not getting enough value in the sense of the big picture of, because a lot of people were getting frustrated that our silver events weren't seeing the top pros at them. So, all right, Tom, God, I need to see you, buddy. Gosh, I need to see you. You need to come back. I do hope you're well, though. All right, guys, we're going to call it. You know me. I could go on for another 3 hours, and nobody needs that. I want to keep these short, which I haven't done a good job of doing. So thank you to all of you that have chimed in. Ray, with the super chatter of the night, multiple super chats. Ray, I'm not going to say you're my favorite, but you are. I mean, there's a lot of cool people here. Clearly, you're going to have to be my favorite for that reason. PDGA and DGPT official on every hole to make calls for players. Agree or disagree? That's not going to solve it, right? There's refs. There's 22 people, and this is maybe a bad analogy. There's 22 people on a football field. There's 3, 4, 6, 8 different refs doing very specific jobs that are supposed to cover very specific things, and they too still get the calls wrong. Sometimes. There's a human element. I'm not suggesting we piss in the wind over it and it's no big deal and we just throw up our hands and say F it all, complete anarchy and lawlessness. Of course not. However, we're still, that is not going to immediately solve everything. It won't. And it'll be very insanely costly. Maybe we'll get there. I feel like we have a lot bigger fish to fry still before we get there, including people just following the rules themselves. And then, following the rules themselves. That would be the easiest one. So much change in schedule, consultations, fully sponsorship, rescue sooner than later. Good talk, Terry. Do your own. Wait to do your homework, too. Does Kristen change her last name? Who knows? That is to be determined. I did research on this, folks. Congratulations to her in silver. I did research, and here's what I found. In Estonia, you can take the man's last name. It's common to keep the last name. Also, a third option that's semi-common is to hyphenate the two names. So basically, it's just like you find in the U.S., and all we can do is wait and see what Kristen's going to do. That's all we can do. And then I'll hopefully get whatever name that is. Hopefully, I'll get it right. You guys have watched The Drop Zone. Please like, share, subscribe, do all those YouTube things. If you want more next week at the U.S. Women, at the Throw Pink and the USDGC, I might try to bring you those. Those might be a little more, a little loopier, but I might try to bring you those nightly if I can. If you guys like this, let me know what you want, and hopefully I can continue to bring you guys more of these. So on a crazy Saturday night, homecoming here in Pewaukee, Wisconsin, thank you for joining. I love all you guys. If I might even be able to end this correctly. I'll see you guys soon. Thanks for watching The Drop Zone.